Okay, hopefully that works now. Okay, chapter 13, we're talking about our renewable energies, stuff that can be sustained over a long period of time and reaching energy sustainability. In other words, again, something we can do for a very long time. The reason that currently won't work is because the vast majority of our fuels we use for energy are non-renewable. We are going to run out of them at some point. Okay, so what is a renewable energy? Renewable energy can be either rapidly generated or is never depleted. So there's kind of like renewable and replenishable. Replenishable being stuff that you can actually grow more of. So we have our non-renewables, our natural gas and nuclear, which we've studied. We have our replenishables kind of thing. Your wind, your biofuels, stuff you have to grow, that kind of thing. And then you have your non-depletables like wind, geothermal, those kind of things. There's basically no way to run out of those. But yet, as we will talk about those are not always accessible in every location. They're much more restricted about where you can put those. You're not going to put a wind turbine in some place that doesn't have a good sustained wind year-round. Okay. One of the best things we can do is energy conservation, basically using less energy. Turning down your thermostat in the winter and putting on an extra, sweater. Turning up your thermostat in the summer and, using fans or just being accustomed to a warmer temperature. Energy efficiency is also another thing. The less amount of energy an item uses, the longer your energy source will last. Hybrid cars are becoming a very, very popular thing. It lowers your cost because you don't have to buy as much fuel, but also you're not using as much fuel, which means our gas and our fossil fuels will last us longer, which is always a good thing. So energy conservation, energy efficiency are always going hand in hand, and they are two things that we cannot avoid or not look at. Even if we go to our renewable energy sources, we still seriously need to make sure that we are conserving energy because we don't want to waste it, and because the more efficient something is, it's just better all around for everybody. Okay, so there's lots of things you can do to help with efficiency and conservation around your house, for your transportation, your electrical devices, those kind of things. One of the biggest things you should do is unplug them. Do not leave even the charger when you're not using it plugged into the wall. There's something called vampire wattage, which means that everything plugged into a wall, whether it is being on or not, is actually using electricity. Absolutely everything. So if you think about it, you have a lot of things plugged in, and when they're turned off, they're even using some voltage. A few years ago, a reporter in New York decided to see exactly how much money she could save if she unplugged everything. So literally, she unplugged everything in her apartment, except for, of course, like the refrigerator and those kind of things that have to stay plugged in. But everything else was unplugged. Her TV, her electronics, everything, lights, everything was unplugged, except when she was using it, and then she would plug it in and use it. And what happened was her electrical bill went from like $100 a month down to like $38 a month. Literally, that much energy was being used as vampire wattage by things that weren't even being on. Not that I expect you to go unplug everything, but it's an interesting thing to think about, that this is going on. We don't always think about it. Transportation, if you live in a community and you can walk somewhere or something like that rather than taking the car, you should try to do that. It's good for you, it's good for the environment, that kind of thing. So, interesting things to think about. Okay, so there's lots of benefits to conservation and energy efficiency. Again, it helps lower cost, it helps decrease our energy demand, and a lot of times you'll hear the term peak demand. In the summer, that's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of times it's around 3 to 5 o'clock when everybody gets home from work and starts turning on electronics and doing the laundry and starting dinner and that kind of thing. A lot of times in areas, if it's really like hot during the summer or cold and there's a high peak demand, sometimes they can't even supply enough for the peak demand, and they literally have rolling blackouts because they cannot provide enough. So it's kind of a scary thing. Okay, so sustainable design, coming up with buildings that we live in and work in that are more energy efficient and that kind of thing. And sustainable design for cities as well is a very big thing. Just looking at your house, if you ever decide to build a house or remodel a house, these are some things you can look into. Making sure you have energy efficient windows so that they aren't leaking heat and air and stuff like that, and your house is more insulated. Making sure how your house faces, you can do things. This is all referred to as passive solar energy. You're not doing anything, you're just using the sun as the sun, because the sun can heat things up and all that kind of stuff. So it's something you should read about and look into, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it in the PowerPoint. But there's lots of things you can do to kind of do that. And here's a green building. It's, I think, I want to say it's a utility building somewhere, but they have a nice green roof. They have these are all basically skylights to let light into the middle, so you don't need as much lighting in the middle of the building and that kind of thing. Pretty cool. Okay. So then we have active solar energy. Active solar energy is things like photovoltaic cells and concentrated solar arrays and those kind of things, using the sun's energy to make electricity. So there's lots of things we can do. Of course, you can do passive, but then you can do something like this. This is a solar heat pump. A lot of people have these for your pool. Basically, water runs through a black mesh on your system on your roof. Because it's black, it helps absorb this sun or the heat from the sun, and it heats your pool. This is very common for pools here in Central Florida, but you can have it also to heat the water, help start heating the water for your shower and that kind of thing. It might not be as hot as you want, but it gets it warm enough so then your heater only has to heat it a tad more to then be as hot as you want for your shower. So it helps reduce the amount of natural gas and stuff you're using to heat your water. Again, some ideas and advantages of passive and active solar. The energy is free. The sun is free. It's not the most efficient thing, but for the most part, usually all this stuff is very easy to install. There's no CO2 emissions. There's no air pollution, water pollution, that kind of thing. It doesn't disturb any land because you're already putting it on the roof of a building that already exists, so you're not having to destroy any land. So that's good. Its disadvantages, again, you need to be in an area that has access to a large amount of sunlight. So this is not going to work in Alaska. You have to figure out how to store hot water, which can be difficult. It needs maintenance, that kind of thing, But it's actually a really good system, especially for your pool owner. Okay, this is a concentrated solar array. These are mirrors. They are not photovoltaic cells. They are mirrors. They reflect the sun to this top of this tower right here, this little thing. All that heat from all these mirrors is concentrated here. It gets super, super, super hot, creates steam. Steam is put down here, runs through this system, which is a turbine and generators to make electricity. So this is a concentrated solar array. Not many people know what these are. There's not that many of them around. Out in Southern California where I grew up, there was one out in the desert we used to go by all the time when we went camping. And I mean, I knew it was for solar energy, but I honestly didn't know how it worked either at that time because I was a kid. So that's a concentrated solar array. So we have solar panels, the photovoltaic cells, and that convert sunlight straight into electricity. And we have your concentrated solar arrays. Interesting things, advantages, disadvantages, again, pretty good for energy. The concentrated solar arrays, or if you have a photovoltaic field like Disney just recently put in, that's going to disturb some land, so you're going to have some land disturbance, especially if you clear the land, which is really probably not necessary, but there's no CO2 emissions. It's very easy to put up. You just basically top everything in place. It's pretty darn cheap. Unfortunately, disadvantages, it can be costly. The materials can be costly. Low efficiency. It's not the most efficient system of getting electricity. You're going to need a backup. because if it's a rainy day or the winter and you're not getting a lot of sun, you're not going to have any energy if you don't have any kind of backup, that kind of thing. So make sure you're familiar with that. If you have any questions, ask in class. Okay, so photovoltaic cells, they convert the sun's energy right into electricity. They can go right on your roof. They're rather expensive, but they're good. There's no pollution of any kind, no CO2 emissions. And the price is coming down. The price is coming down on these. You're going to see, I would bet you're going to see these popping up on houses more and more and more in the future, and I wouldn't be surprised if your houses have them in the future when you guys are old enough and decide to buy a house. The nice thing about this, if you decide to put this in, the best time to put a solar panel in on your roof is during construction, because you can just put it right into the construction costs and into your mortgage. Trying to come up and put it in later, a lot of times that's tougher. But if you put in enough and you are hooked in, you're still hooked into the electrical system. But if you over-generate more electricity than you need, it will feed that electricity, excuse me, back to your electrical company. And the electrical company will actually pay you for that energy you're providing them. They'll use that energy for your neighbors and stuff, but they will pay you. So if you've ever gone out and looked at the meter on your house and it's turning, if you had photovoltaic cells that was giving energy back to the company, the electrical company, it would actually turn and go the other way and give you credit. So that's kind of cool. And then at night, when you're not making any electricity, then you'll use a little bit of the electricity off the electrical grid coming from the electric company. So it's a pretty neat thing. I wish I had them on my house. Again, photovoltaic cells, they can be anywhere. You can pretty much drop them in as long as there's plenty of sun. The biggest thing with electricity is how do you store the electricity? Storing electricity is very difficult. Batteries are very, very inefficient. One of the best things we need to do is come up with a better way of storing electricity for the future. That's a huge issue. Advantages and disadvantages of photovoltaic. Again, they only work when it's sunny. So if it's not sunny all the time, they're pretty low efficiency, yet they have no pollution, no emissions. They'll last quite a while. Low environmental impact, especially when you're dropping them on the roof. Initial high cost of them, they can be quite costly, but again, you'll get that back in the long run. So advantages and disadvantages, make sure you're comfortable with those. Okay, biomass. Biomass is anything we grow, so your plants, your lumber, so your wood, your charcoal, your biofuels that come from ethanol and biodiesel, those kind of things. Almost all of our energy, honestly, in some way, shape, or form, comes from the sun. It's the thing. Photosynthesis was done by plants and algae. They ended up being fossilized into our fossil fuels. Our solar, our wind, our hydroelectric, all that stuff is basically driven by the sun. Nuclear is about the only one that isn't. And I keep yawning, I apologize. Okay. Modern carbon versus fossil carbon. This is a biggie. This is a biggie. Modern carbon. The modern carbon is the carbon that is currently cycling in the carbon cycle. When you grow a plant, what's the carbon in the plant is the modern carbon. It's supposed to be used up, released, but photosynthesis will occur and use it again. Fossil carbon is the carbon coming from fossil fuels. It's excess carbon that was stashed way back when during the dinosaurs and fossilized to be kept out of the carbon cycle. Yet our burning it is putting that carbon back into the carbon cycle. It's excess carbon cycle, and that excess carbon cycle is going to end up somewhere. And for the most part right now, it's ending up as CO2 in our atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas. So modern carbon versus fossil carbon. Make sure you're clear on that. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them in class. And I'm going to cut this off because I'm almost to my 15 minutes, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.